Hi, welcome guys. Welcome back. I'm Mrs. Savage and I'm going to teach you today how to make a pinch pot. Very simple technique that you can use to make a variety of things. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to get into my clay. And I have these blocks of clay. My students at home have two small blocks. This is a small block and one big block. We're going to focus on the small block right now. I want you to kind of twist and rip off some clay from one of these blocks. Okay, I have a small chunk and a big chunk. I'm going to use this smaller chunk. I fit my hands around it. It's like the size of a tennis ball. And the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to make sure that my clay is prepared for me to work with it. So the first thing I want to do is compact my clay. In order to compact your clay, you're going to smack it with both hands, alternating which hand, and that's going to force all of the clay particles to the center. And if there's any air trapped inside, it's going to force the trapped air out. So we're going to compact. You're going to use a little bit of strength on this one. You know, it looks like my hands are going really fast. They're not. That sound, you should hear that smack sound, and it might sting a little bit, like a really good high five. Okay, so now I have a ball of clay. It's not perfectly round, and that's okay. It doesn't have to be perfectly round. It fits in my hand nicely. It's not this massive ball of clay. I want something kind of, I can cup both hands around it. You can kind of see a little bit peeking out. Okay, small enough. Okay, the next thing we're going to do, once you're done compacting, keep in mind that your hands make a lot of heat. And if you touch your clay too much, you're going to start drying out the surface. When you dry out the surface, it's going to get crusty and cracked. So it's a really good idea to keep a sponge. All right, many of my kiddos have these square sponges. Keep a sponge and maybe a bowl of water nearby so you can rehydrate your hands when you need to. It's also a good idea to keep your damp cloth nearby so you can dry your hands or wipe a surface, just to kind of keep your area tight. Okay, I'm going to go back to my ball of clay, and it's compacted. Now I'm going to take my thumb, meat ball. I'm going to squish that ball onto my thumb. I don't want to squish it all the way through because this is going to end up being the bottom of my pot. But I am going to squish it in deep enough to where it's like about the thickness of a thumb deep. So the distance between the tip of my thumb and the end of this ball of clay is about like that. Okay, so it's about the thickness of a thumb deep. Okay, so I've got my thumb in the ball. All right, I'm going to put 3 fingers out. Okay, I'm going to tuck my pinky in because I don't need him today. 3 fingers out, and I'm going to rotate my hand. I'm going to do flat 3-finger pinch, just a gentle pinch, not a heavy pinch. Don't curl your fingers. You need to have flat fingers. And then rotate it on your thumb, flat finger pinch, flat finger pinch, flat finger pinch. And you're going to keep flat finger pinching. You may have to move your thumb up and down so that way you can get the walls all the same thickness. And what's happening is it's starting to open up. Okay, that hole is getting bigger, the pot's getting wider, and it looks like it's filling up with air. That's what we want. If your pot is cracking, you need to add water, and the water will kind of give it a nice little relaxation. All right, so now I have this pot with kind of some thickness here. It should be about the thickness of a finger, okay? Or a pinky is actually, we are going to use our pinky. Our pinky is our measurement device. So we're about the thickness of a pinky, okay? I'm going to go ahead and angle the camera down a little bit so you guys can see a little bit more of what I'm about to do. Okay, so the next thing we need to do is this big boy is really heavy. The bottom is really heavy. Okay, so the inside looks fine, but the bottom's super heavy. So what I want to do is I'm going to put it in my hand. Don't put it on your table. Put it in your hand. You're going to cup your hand, and that's going to help keep the shape of the bottom of your pot. You're going to put your thumb down and wipe it up the walls. So push down and wipe it up the walls, and that's going to stretch out that bottom. Rotate it a little bit and do it again. You're going to keep rotating and stretching and rotating. And you're wiping and pushing the inside. Okay? Don't push too hard, too fast, because what you can do is you can actually accidentally go through the wall. Okay? Make sure you push down all the way on the inside, push down, and wipe up the side wall. Okay, so this pot's starting to get bigger and bigger. That's exactly what we want. And this is just practice pinch pots. Now we want this outside rim to be nice and clean, so I'm going to take my thumb and I'm going to just wipe it gently around the rim. So if you do have cracking and you've added water to it, just dunk your finger in water, add it to the rim, and then you can use your thumb and wipe it so that way the rim of your pinch pot gets really, really smooth. And the way you can tell if your pinch pot is nice, even walls, or if its walls are too thick, is when you hold it in your hand, it should feel even and balanced. If it feels like it's still super heavy at the bottom, maybe you have to thin it out. If it feels like it wants to roll to one side, maybe that side's got too much clay on it and you want to thin that out. Okay? So your whole point of this is to try to get your pinch pot to be as hollow as possible, with the walls being the same thickness all the way through. So you don't want it to be real thin up here, real thick down here, real thin here, and real thick here. You want it to be the same thickness all the way through. And it may take some time. It's going to take some practice. So what we're going to do once we've made our practice pinch pot, remember this is just practice. So if you don't do it right the first time, that's okay, because clay is forgiving and it will help you learn. Clay likes to teach you how to use it. Okay? So we're going to call this pinch pot done for now. And I'm going to store my pinch pot upside down if I need to go get tools or something. If you store it on the table flat like this, it's going to end up with a flat bottom. Okay? But since this is flat and this is round, we're going to store it upside down. So that way the rim stays flat and this part stays rounded. Okay? We're going to need to cut this in half. Now a knife you would think works really well. It actually doesn't. When you put a knife on it and you push, it smushes it. So you're going to want a really thin piece of string. A thin piece of string that is best is probably dental floss. So if you have some dental floss, you can come try this. I have a very special ceramic tool that's made of wire. It's a thin wire. If you have thin wire, like floral wire for flowers, you could use floral wire. I'm going to go grab my wire and cut it in half, and we'll inspect it. So this is wire that I have. Fishing line works great too. So you can use fishing line and just tie like little washers from the hardware store on the ends, and that way you have something to hold on to. And you're just gonna take the wire and push down right in the center, okay, until you get to the table. And that'll cut it in half nice and even. And what we're looking for are evenly shaped walls, okay? So you can see the walls are about a pinky thick, and they're the same thickness all the way around. I want you to cut your pinch pots in half, because that's going to tell you whether or not you pinched too hard. And if you pinch too hard, your wall will be thin. And if you didn't pinch and push enough, like here I have a little bit of a thick spot, your wall will be too thick. Okay, this clay is not ruined, it's not wasted. Okay, it won't go back together. But what we do to make sure this clay is good and usable for the next project, so I'm going to actually take my damp sponge and I'm going to make sure my hands are really wet. Okay, kind of drippy wet. Put my sponge back in my water bowl. So now I have really wet, drippy hands, and I'm going to just squeeze these pieces back together into a log. And then I'm going to take this log and fold it in half. Squeeze these pieces back together, and it's going to go from slimy to sticky to perfect. Okay, that's how clay works. It'll be really slimy and gross at first, and then it'll start to get sticky and tacky, and then it will be perfect. So if you pull your clay out because you forgot to wrap it up properly, you're going to need to add water to your hands, squeeze it into a log. It'll be slimy, then sticky, then perfect. Okay, so this is good. This is really nicely worked back together. Now I have this big lump of clay. So I'm going to just smack it on the table a couple of times just to get it into more of a blob shape, right, instead of a log. And now I want to use it again, so I'm going to compact it with my hands. So I'm smacking at the top, and then I pick it up, and I smack it at the bottom. And then I throw it and smack it, throw it and smack it. So I have lots of, so I get a smack every time it changes hands. If you just put it in one hand and you pat it like that, you're going to end up with a flat pancake. So no pancakes. You want it to be round. So you're going to rotate the ball every time you smack it, so that way it gets smacked all over. The faster you move, the quicker you get it to be compacted, and the less you dry it out. If you dry it out too much, you have to add water again and squeeze it into a log and make it slimy and sticky and perfect. All right, that is the first step in making a pinch pot and practicing. I want you to make 2 pinch pots and make sure you cut them in half. Okay, so you're going to do one, cut it in half, inspect it. Then I want you to smack it back into a ball. And then I want you to cut the second one in half and inspect it and see if you've improved. See how you've gotten better. See what you can learn from it. Once you've done 2, we're going to go ahead and move on to the actual project. Now, I need to touch my computer for this. So what I've done is I've taken a plastic bag. It's a clear plastic bag. And I put the plastic bag, I cut a piece off of it, and I laid a piece on top of my keyboard, so that way I don't get clay on my keyboard. Another thing you can do with your bucket of water that's nearby, this is an old ice cream bucket, is wash your hands in the bucket. Okay. Make sure that you're really clean. There's no chunks of clay on there, because sometimes you can get little chunks of clay on your hands. Take this opportunity to clean your work surface if you ended up getting a lot of chunks on your work surface. Okay? And then you take your damp rag, and you can actually dry your hands a little bit with the damp rag. And now I'm clean enough to touch my computer. All right, I'll see you on the next video.